Welcome to the Church of Perpetual Life. It's a pleasure to see you tonight. My name is Neil Vandry. I'm your officiator here tonight. Come on in and get a seat. If this is your first time joining us at Perpetual Life, I'd like to give a special great welcome to you and welcome to everyone online. We have a lot of people in Zoom and on our YouTube live stream, rather. Okay. Tonight we're celebrating all of the holidays. Here at Perpetual Life, we like to celebrate everything. Christmas and Hanukkah, the winter solstice, and even the coming new year. So we're celebrating everything. And we want to, at Perpetual Life, we celebrate all of the holidays from all of the different things. So these holidays, they break up the flow of every of the weeks and the months. And so we break our regular schedules to celebrate life. And without holidays, I think our weeks would run together in kind of a humdrum style. So we're going to celebrate Christmas, and we're celebrating Hanukkah, we're celebrating the New Year, the winter solstice, and all of the holidays that we can. Come forward, Shri, and if this is your first time here, I'd like you to raise your hand and let me know that you're here for the very first time. We have a little gift for you. Shri has a little necklace, and come forward, Ella. Everyone with their hands up, they can have a welcome necklace, and we welcome you to our church. So glad to have all of you here. Now, if this is your first time, it's very important that we get your information. So please be sure to sign the information if you haven't done so already. Make sure that we have your phone number and your email address so we can keep you posted on all of the coming events and on all of the things that are happening in the cutting edges of age reversal. You'll want to be on those mailing lists. We'd also like to welcome you to give donations. If you're online, you can do so online. We have some donation boxes there. Please, we welcome those donations. They help us to run our events. Tonight we have two excellent presentations, and you may have seen that we've got a number of things going on, and then after the presentations we will have the ceremony of the Remembrance of the Resurrectables. You're welcome to stay in the sanctuary afterwards to watch that presentation on. And also, after the event tonight, as you know, we have the suspended animation team here. Great to have you. Yes. So we have the ambulance outside. If you haven't seen it yet, if you haven't done a tour, after the event, it'll be open for being able to do a tour. Our creed here at the Church of Perpetual Life, we believe that all of life is sacred and that we have been given this one life to make unlimited. We believe in our Creator's divine plan for all of humanity to have infinite lifespans in perfect health and eternal joy, rendering death to be optional. By following our gospel, we achieve eternal life, creating a heaven here on earth. We follow Nikolai Fedorov, who taught that the transcendence of the Creator will only be solved when humanity, in our unified efforts, become an instrument of universal resuscitation, when the divine word becomes our divine action. And we follow Arthur C. Clarke, who said the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. And so we enter each day energized in spirit and empowered by the words of our prophets to live in joy, serving our Creator and all of mankind forever and ever. We're super lucky to have suspended animation here tonight, so be sure to get a chance to see that ambulance. And those of you who are on Zoom and YouTube live streaming, we're going to bring the Zoom into the ambulance for one of the tours tonight. At the end of the event, we're going to bring in the Zoom team, so the Zoom people, so that they can see the Cryonics ambulance as well, the mobile operating room, if you will. All right. Tonight we also have a special holiday gift for you. It's from Ray Kurzweil. Ray has a new book, The Singularity is Nearer, and a couple of months ago he was speaking tonight at our church, and he gave a gift, and he's giving that a gift again tonight as a holiday gift. So if you see at the front table one of the cards, pick up one of those cards, do the QR code, share it with your friends, and he will be sending those out. Now those books will be printed in, I believe, June or July, so it'll be this summer before they're actually getting shipped. But get on the list now. Don't miss your chance to get a copy of Ray's new book, The Singularity is Nearer. At this time, we're going to take just a moment to have the elections for our new board slate, the board of directors. Here it is, December the 14th, 2023, and we have on the slate Charlie Cam for president of the board of directors, Bill Faloon for Vice President, Ben Best for Secretary Treasurer, Jeff Shaw as Board Member, Andrew Michael as Board Member, Chase Falcon as Board Member, and Chance Faloon as Board Member. And we have alternate board member Robert Cubis. We've got a spelling error there on the screen, but Robert Cubis is here tonight. So what we'd like to do is have this election by simple voice acclamations. So this is our slate for the board of directors and the team for the coming years. So all in favor of this election, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. All the ayes have it, so this slate has been elected now for the board of directors for Perpetual Life. Thank you. If you're curious about cryonics, you're going to hear a lot about cryonics tonight, and we have lots of resources in our library in the social hall, and you can also come to me. I'm very happy to help you get more information about cryonic suspension. Tonight, as I mentioned, we have two great presentations. Before I get to that, I do want to mention the fact that next month, next month, our service is going to be January the 25th, Thursday, the fourth Thursday, but we also have the celebration of James Bedford Day. James Bedford Day will be celebrated with Ben Best on January 12th, Friday, and we'll have more information coming to our website, so don't want to miss that. But now coming to our presentations tonight, we have two great presentations. And please make note of your questions, as there will be a short question and answer session after each presentation. To start off, we have Aaron Drake. Aaron Drake is an American paramedic and a cryonicist. He's worked as a paramedic firefighter in Lincoln, Nebraska, and he was the medical response director for Alcor for many years. Aaron helped to set up the cryonics facility in China at the Shandong Yinfeng Life Science Research Institute in Jinan, Shandong, China from 2016 to 2022. He worked as the Director of Research and Chief Specialist at Yinfeng, and during his years in China, he continued to consult with Alcor as a Senior Medical Response Consultant. With Eric Vogt, Drake founded the International Cryomedicine Experts, the ICE, a company providing SST services. And according to Aaron Drake, he's participated in more than 80 suspensions. 100 now, thank you, we'll update that. Over 100 cryopreservations around the world, and now he is with Resurgence Biomedical Sciences. So let's welcome to the stage our good friend Aaron Drake. Come on up, Aaron. Hey.
Are we live? Very good. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the great introduction. I really appreciate that. My name is Aaron Drake. I was going to tell you about myself, but I don't have to now. I have been involved in the science of cryonics for a long time, probably about 15 years now. And I've had an opportunity to kind of work in a lot of different areas of it and really broaden my field of knowledge and my experience. And I'm grateful to Resurgence Biomedical Sciences here in Florida, as they've hired me as Director of Clinical Education, and I'll be working with a number of medical providers around the country, training them on everything that I've done, and it's good to be here in Florida. I came here a lot as a kid, swimming in Fort Lauderdale at the International Hall of Fame pool. I really enjoyed that. I like Florida. So what am I going to talk about tonight? It's the echoes through the ice, honoring the pioneers on the path to tomorrow. What does that mean? You know, when a person decides to donate their body to science research, they do it through the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act. Now, we kind of commonly talk about cryonics, but that's the actual mechanism of how they do it. You've probably listened to a lot of people talk before about cryonics, why it might work, what's the science behind it, what are the procedures that are done. We've got, you know, Suspended Animation brought their ambulance outside so you can go out and actually see the process of things that are done. That's the how. How does cryonics work? How does all this? I'm not here to talk to you about that tonight. What I'd like to talk to you about is the why. Why do people choose that? And I'm hoping through this, I might give you a little bit of insight into the world that I've had and what explains why to me. When most people think of cryonics, this is what they see. They see the doers. To some people, it looks science fiction, science fantasy, futuristic. Some people see it kind of as a cold and clinical environment. Everybody has a different perspective. This is the how, okay? What I really want to do is talk about is the why. These are the individuals that most of them I've been involved with in helping them fulfill their directives of being cryopreserved. Hal Finney, if anyone's ever heard of Bitcoin, he had the very first Bitcoin ever. Very much involved in that, developed a disease. He finally succumbed to that disease. We were there, his family was there, his wife, very loving, and it's great to see that he was able to fulfill his wishes on that. The very first person in China to be cryopreserved, Du Hong, a science fiction writer and editor, a famous movie out there called The Three-Body Problem, and a book. She was the editor for that, made into a major motion picture movie. We were able to cryopreserve her and bring her from China over into the U.S. Many people have heard this name before, Ted Williams, a famous baseball player. You know, I was not involved in this. This was a long time before I started, but his body was cryopreserved. Great athlete, coming from a different area of sports. You have people that work in research, in medicine, people who work in the arts and sciences, in entertainment. They come from all sorts of different fields. This was a famous actor and producer and writer. Here's a person who developed an entire gaming industry, and the entire city of Laughlin, Nevada was named after him. And he was very devoted into this, donating lots and lots of money over the years. You've got people who worked for MIT and who developed high-tech science projects. You've got people who, close to home, were very involved in life extension and bringing this science and donating lots of money to seeing this happen. You've got medical doctors who contributed a great portion of their career to ensuring that these people get what they want. Dr. Harris was a chief medical advisor for Alcor. I worked with him for many, many years. He helped improve my surgical skills very, very well. What I want to really talk about tonight is this particular individual. Now, here's a young little girl. Very different from all the other people. Most people who decide to choose cryonics do it for a variety of reasons. Some people love life. They don't want it to end. Some people love their family. They want to see their children, their great-grandchildren, the generations after that. Some people want to see the future, what science can bring. We can take our phones now and look up anything. What will happen in the next 20, 50, 100 years? How will that technology be? Some people are very fascinated with that. Some people have a lot of money, and they say, what do you mean I can't take my money with me? I'll show you, I'll take my money with me. And there's lots of other reasons of why people choose to do this. Let's talk about Mathrin right here. A beautiful 2-year-old girl from Thailand. Her parents were both PhD doctors in medical science. At 2, she developed an epinemoblastoma, which is a very rare form of pediatric brain cancer. It's basically incurable. Despite the parents' knowledge in medicine, medical sciences, there was really nothing they could do. They extended her life as long as they could, many, many months. That's even rare in that disease. But they gave everything they could in developing the science to try to keep her alive. Eventually, it was to no avail. Here she is with her brother. Over the course of about 12 months, little Mathurin went through probably 12 different surgical procedures on her brain, trying to debulk or remove that brain tissue that had become infected with the cancer. They even had to leave part of the skull off when they would sew up the brain. So it was really just soft tissue up there. It was not hard. They sent her to radiation treatment. 10 different times she went through radiation. She had actually lost the ability to walk because they had removed about 50% of her brain. And yet, at that young age, that little girl, over the course of the next months, the brain adapted to it, and she learned to walk, she learned to talk. Overall, her health was still failing, of course, but it's amazing what the brain could do, even though it was deteriorating. They cared for her a lot. They had her at the hospital all the time. They decided at some point that they wanted her to be cryopreserved. The parents, they said, you know, we may never see Mathurin again. We don't know. But here's another different reason why someone might choose this. For all of us, we've had a very long life. We've got a whole host of memories. For little Mathurin, she had no memories. She had no opportunity. And that was the gift they wanted to give her, was the opportunity for a life. That was the final gift. That was the best gift the parents thought they could give her. So they called Alcor. They made arrangements. We had set up for them to fly to the United States. We had a specialized hospice facility for children in Los Angeles they were going to come to, and we had it set up where she was going to come be admitted into this facility, and we were going to take care of little Mathurin. We were going to have our entire team there. We're going to have our surgeons, our perfusionists, everyone waiting while they gave Mathurin this comfort care in hospice, palliative care, easing the pain while you slowly slip into cardiac arrest. We had this all set up. The hospital had been very generous with their time and their willingness to do this. 2 days before she was to fly to the United States, her respiratory drive dropped. She couldn't fly. They had to put her on a ventilator. What do you do? All these arrangements had been made. Well, we did what we had to do. We gathered up all of our equipment, we gathered up our team, and we flew to Thailand, to Bangkok. We had to talk with the hospital there. We had to explain what we're doing. At least some people in the U.S. know what's going to happen, or they've heard of it, or maybe they've seen it in a movie. In Thailand, they had no idea what was going to go on. We had to explain it to them. We had to talk about the rules and regulations and make sure that we fit into their society of rules while still trying to help honor this little girl's wishes. When we got there, her health had been declining. She could walk a little bit, but only on good times. When people are near the end of life, they have good days, they have bad days. This was a good day, but it was only a few days before the end. She became sicker and sicker, and finally the hospital said, well, we think that she has 2 days or so left to live. In Thailand, people don't want to die in the hospital. That's just something you don't do. You want to die at home with your family, with your friends, your loved ones. You want to be there. So in Thailand, they discharge you to your home environment. And it was nice because the family had a very large facility. They could care for her at home. They could set up a medical bed. Then they even set up a surgery center for us right there in this very large compound. We had our team there, and we basically waited. as Matherin's health began to decline over the next 48 hours, breathing less and less, becoming less conscious, and finally, with all her family around her, they said goodbye for the last time. Even though we take a real clinical approach to this, we're professionals in medicine, we're professionals in what we do, it's still hard, especially with children, to see something like that happen. As Neil said, I've done this over 100 times, and I still remember everyone I've worked with, and it's sad to see that happen, and yet it's an opportunity that makes me feel like I have helped them with this directive, this choice, that maybe they'll have this opportunity to live longer. And to me, that really gives me a sense of satisfaction, a silver lining, if you will. Well, we were all set up. There, we did the surgery. Picture of me. We did the perfusion. We did everything there in Thailand. The body was then placed on dry ice. We had made all arrangements with the airline, the cargo, to have her shipped to the United States. Very difficult process to get through all the different cities. We had to have mortuaries in Thailand, have mortuaries in Los Angeles. We had to go through customs. We had to go from customs back to the airline, and then finally to Phoenix, Arizona, where Alcor was located. And it was successful. We got her there. Eventually, the family came to Alcor to see. They came, they took a tour. We went through the whole building, showed them everything there was. Took them into the patient care bay, where you've seen the pictures of the tall dewars, the stainless steel dewars that are up there with a liquid nitrogen, and the individuals who've donated their bodies are stored in there. They brought a photo and placed a photo of Matherin on there, really as a remembrance. It was like a memorial service, just like you'd have in a church or place of worship. It was really nice. That photo is actually still there today. In fact, I think it's the only photo that's ever been placed on one of the dewars. But it was a really touching moment to see that. Now, this was written up in the papers. It had made a lot of stories over there. And so Netflix stepped in and decided to make a documentary of this. They came out, they filmed it. They filmed it afterwards. They talked to everybody they interviewed. They flew to Thailand. They flew to the United States. They interviewed myself. They interviewed one of the other doctors on the case. We talked about it. And they put together a beautiful documentary. In fact, this documentary was nominated for an Emmy. They call it Hope Frozen, The Quest to Live Twice. And it's a story about the love that this family had for their little girl and the gift that they wanted to give her for that. That was the why for this family. Very different than the why for anyone else who gets into this. As I mentioned, it was nominated for an Emmy Award. And guess what? It won. Yeah. Isn't that amazing? In fact, it was the first Emmy ever won for a film crew and a program out of Thailand. Just an amazing process. This was Palin Weddle. She was the director for it, and this was her project. And what an outstanding event that was. They went to lots and lots of different film festivals around the world and continuously won awards. And it told this wonderful story. And if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. You can look at it. And we've got, I believe, a video of this. This is just a trailer. And part of it is in Thai. There are subtitles. I'll give you a moment to get your glasses out if you need them. I need them. For those of you who are online, thanks for being here. And you'll be able to see the subtitles across the bottom. Not the entire thing's in Thai, but when they're talking to the Father and he's explaining it, that's basically what he's saying. So
อะไรคือความมีชีวิตอะไรคือไม่มีชีวิตเราตอบกับตัวเองว่าเราไม่สามารถบอกได้เลยว่าไอ้ตายไปแล้วแต่เรารู้ว่าเราจากกันยากมากที่เราจะได้เจอกันอีก
ไม่ว่าจะตั้งแต่วันที่โคม่าไอเนี่ยผ่าตัดมาตั้ง10 ครั้งคีโม12 ครั้งฉายแสง20 ครั้งแต่ทุกครั้งของการต่อสู้หนูก็สามารถที่จะฟื้นกลับขึ้นมาพร้อมกับรอยยิ้ม
มิงจะไปบวชเนรครับก็อยากบวชมานานแล้วครับแต่ว่าศรัทธาในพระพุทธศาสนาครับแล้วก็ตอนน้องป่วยก็ได้บอกน้องไว้ว่าอยากจะไปบวชให้ครับ
ว่าเมื่อก่อนคนหยุดหายใจเราบอกว่าตายพอพัฒนาต่อมาเราก็บอกว่าถ้าเกิดสมองหยุดทำงานถือว่าตายเราสามารถเรียงจีโนมเรียง DNA ดังนั้นเราก็บอกว่าเดิมทีมันไม่มีชีวิตแล้วเรามาทำให้มันมีชีวิตก็แน่นอนว่าเรากำลังจะก้าวไปสู่ความไม่ตายในตรงนั้นได้คือจริงๆแล้วนี้เนี่ยผมบอกให้ครอบครัวทำ Cryonics แต่เขาไม่เห็นด้วยจนกระทั่งเวลาใกล้ๆสุดท้ายมาถึง
Most people think it's going to be really cold in here. They think liquid nitrogen, minus 196 degrees Celsius, it's going to be cold. In order for cryonics to work, you have to really look at what will be the mechanism to make it work. Regenerative medicine, three-dimensional printing, stem cell seeding, we could maybe regrow a whole new body. Or this may never work.
อย่างนี้แล้วกันเนาะผมไม่แคร์ว่าใครจะว่าเราเป็นคนที่ไม่รู้จักตัดใจและยึดติดอยู่กับตรงนี้ผมไม่แคร์เพราะว่าผมเป็นอย่างนั้นจริงๆผมตัดใจไม่ได้
Neil before said I'd been involved in 100 plus cases. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because it's truly been an honor to be a part of these people's lives. You know, I'm not just there at the end, I'm there as the end is occurring. And I get to learn a lot about these individuals. I get to learn about their lives. I talk to their families. These people are very special. They've all had something so unique in their life. Maybe their careers or just their outlook, their optimism. Maybe that's a great way to characterize it. And to help them fulfill that directive, that last wish for the opportunity for a tomorrow, maybe. And as I said, everyone does this for different reasons. And this was just for the love of their daughter and they trying to give her the opportunity for a life. And it's been a real privilege to help these people. So I wanted to share my stories, my experiences. Thanks for letting me talk and listening to me tonight. Okay?
We have a few minutes for questions and answers with you, Aaron. Are there any questions for Aaron Drake? Back over here. Okay. Don?
Great presentation. I just got two quick questions to ask you. Where the baby was, the lab, was that in Arizona or Texas? Where was that at?
Yeah, so we flew her to Alcor in Scottsdale, Arizona, is where she's currently her body's being stored now.
Okay, my second question is, because I'm a scientist and I study a lot of this stuff, when do they think they want to revise the body at some point? How many years later would they try to revise it? That's my next question.
You know, that is the $1,000,000 question. And, you know, when? It was asked to me earlier tonight. And, you know, none of us know, of course. If you understand math equations, I say it's like a math equation. Right now, we're working on one half of the side of the math equation, and we're waiting on the second half. So we're trying to perfect the process. How can we mitigate or minimize the damage that occurs before clinical death? Try to keep those cells as viable as possible in a profound hypothermic environment. How can we create the best opportunity for the scientists and the doctors of the future to actually accomplish in this mission? But that's the second half of the equation, how to reverse it. We don't know when that will happen. You had Ray Kurzweil just a little while ago come in and talk. You know, he has this theory of the singularity. Theory of the singularity says that the computers will become so advanced by 2035, and I think that date might have been revised a bit, but it was originally 2035, that they'll be able to solve any problem that we feed into it, including cure any medical problem, and maybe even cure any cryopreservation and reverse it. Computers would be that sophisticated. Now, it would probably take some time after that to implement all of this knowledge and to make it work. That's a very optimistic outlook in terms of a time frame, 2035 to 2045. I don't know if that's realistic or not. Some people say maybe 100 years, but we're just kind of pulling a number out of the air. With the rate of advancement of technology, think about your kids, you know, their phones today. If they've got an iPhone, it's a year old. Wow, that's an old iPhone, isn't it? Anything you can think up today, an app, there's an app for that. I remember my mother talking about how long it took to go from a black and white TV to a color TV. That span of time. She was so resistant to use a microwave. When I came home with a microwave one day, she's like, well, why would you bring that? So the rate of change is truly exponential, as Ray suggests. And so I think it's hard for us to think that something within that shorter period of time might work, but who knows? I don't have an answer to your question, though, either.
So I have two questions. One, I don't know of anybody who's gone to hospice who has survived. And so once you get that death sentence, wouldn't it be beneficial to be preserved, cryopreserved immediately rather than waiting for you to have the full deterioration of you stop breathing? And then my second question, why can't you bring the bodies back to life? They bring embryos back to life.
Both are great questions. With respect to the hospice, you're absolutely right. As you get closer and closer to death, more things are breaking down in the body. Organs are starting to fail. You're really getting multi-systems organ failure. Damage is accruing. A number of states have enacted death with dignity laws. They have a number of different names for that. They have it in Canada or the MAID system, the U.S. People are taking a look at that as an opportunity. In fact, we have cryopreserved some people under those laws where they have identified, I have a terminal illness. It's been verified by doctors. And I'm going to take that opportunity and end my life. That's kind of a way we shouldn't talk about in chronics, but I'm going to stop the biological process now and optimize its opportunity to be cryopreserved and come back in the future. So we've gone on standby. Sarah here from Suspended Animation and I were both on the first one in the United States. And the individual had everything set up legally to do this with the doctor's approval, with the cocktail of medicines. His family was there. He got to say goodbye to his family. He got to get a glass of his favorite scotch and take the little cocktail of pills that would relatively quickly end his life. And he fell asleep. The nurse was there. She pronounced, and we began immediately, eliminating all that damage that can occur.
Question is, what state was that in?
Washington.
Thank you. Here's a question back here from Dave.
So in science right now, they can reverse clinical death all the time. We do that with CPR. We do that with defibrillators. We do that with cardiac massage. We do it with heart transplants. People are clinically dead all the time. We can reverse that today. But in these instances, there's so many things that are going on. Even if we could bring them back shortly, they still have that disease process. We have to wait for the cures for cancer to catch up. We actually have to wait for all of medicine to really catch up with what we're doing. Once they have a cure for cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, major trauma, then we can begin to apply this. Bringing them back with all the same problems today wouldn't be good. So that's why we kind of need to wait for medicine to catch up with us.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron Drake, for the presentation. But this may be a silly and naive question, but after seeing the video thing, why are the containers standing up instead of laying down? Even in the science fiction movies, they're always standing upright. So that's my question.
Well, I think it's more efficient to have them upright. Multiple patients are stored in one doer. You see that and you just think, oh, there's one in there. No, there could be maybe 4 bodies in there. In China, they have some that hold 6. Alcor, I believe, now has some that hold maybe up to 8 or 9. So to have them vertically allows you to fill the doer this way rather than filling it horizontally. They originally used to be buried in the ground. Or not buried in the ground, that's not a good place to. A hole was created and they were lowered into the ground, these doers, and so vertical was much better than horizontal. I'm sure there's a lot of other scientific reasons why that might be best. But it wasn't a silly question.
We have a question over here from Linda.
Yes, well, first of all, I came a few minutes late, so I didn't hear it. Was this glioblastoma that it was?
Yes.
So I just lost a friend a month ago. He's 75. Took 2 years for him to die of this disease. It's terrible what he had to go through. And there's no cure, they told me.
You're right, there is no cure. This was a particular variety called an apenimoblastoma, but they're all very, very similar in that they basically create little tendrils that crawl into the brain. While you can debulk the large tumor, these fingers that kind of go into the brain, you just can't get those out. And so you're right, it's always terminal.
And the other question I have, this whole process seems to me extremely expensive. I wonder if they had a GoFundMe or a charity. How could these parents afford to do this? It would be, most people wouldn't be able to go through a process like this.
Well, there's a lot of different ways to fund this. Some people do it with insurance, life insurance, and it's very inexpensive. If you're healthy and can get insurance, you might pay a small monthly premium, and that might fund it. Some people pay for it out of pocket. This particular family had the financial wherewithal to make this happen. And there are different organizations. You know, we've mentioned Alcor. People have heard of Cryonics Institute. The price ranges are fairly dramatic, but they provide a host of different services. So you can do it very inexpensively. You can also spend a lot of money. You are correct.
Let's go to George.
Yeah, I have a question. There's a lot of creatures that are frozen in the ice in the Arctic and Antarctic, and even I understand some humans they found from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Has your system ever taken any of those entities and brought them back to life or try to bring them back to life that are already frozen in the ice?
Well, there's a lot of damage that has occurred. Now, in some cases, they do have the intact DNA in which they could possibly clone that DNA and redo regrow that animal. Understand that what our processes are designed to do is to prevent the damage that occurs when something is frozen. So there's 3 kinds of damage that can occur. You can have ischemic damage. That's when you have a heart attack or a stroke, right? You've starved a particular organ of oxygen, and the damage begins to accrue in that organ. People with a heart attack, they don't recover. People with stroke sometimes have a hard time, walking again, talking again. That part was damaged. If we start right away, we can prevent that ischemic damage from occurring. Next is freezing damage. We can replace the fluids of the body with a medical grade antifreeze, and by doing that, once we go below freezing, we don't get the nucleation that occurs, the freezing of water on the extracellular surface of the cells, and that preventing that damage. And then decomposition, which when you bury someone over time, of course, the body decomposes. They, by storing below the glass transition temperature, which is about minus 120 degrees Celsius, they're stored in liquid nitrogen all the way up to 196 degrees Celsius, so it's much colder than that. We can stop all metabolic activity and actually prevent decomposition. So our goal is to achieve all three of those mitigations of damage. When they find these bodies, when they find these animals, none of that has occurred. Tremendous amount of damage. The technology to reverse that, repair that, is much further down the road, if it'll ever come. So that's why they can't just find an animal from 5,000 years ago and wake it up. None of these processes have been done. Otherwise, we just stick everybody in the freezer and wait. Well, they did that in Colorado, you know.
Yeah. Aaron,
Thanks,
going
George.
back to that question on the question on cost, we famously had Martine Rothblatt speak here at Perpetual Life, who said the cost of cryonics is simply the cost of a cup of coffee every day, and that's a great way to look at it. If you want to save your life, this is one way to do it. But there's a question that I have coming in from Zoom online. They're asking, and if you can speak to this, okay? It's what are the annual maintenance costs for a person in cryonic suspension? Do you have an idea?
Well, so it depends on whether the question is the annual maintenance costs to the family or the individual or to the organization. Most organizations, when they provide this, you may have a monthly fee to be a member, and then once you're cryopreserved, that cryopreservation fee covers everything indefinitely. And they even set up a trust. They put that money into a trust. The interest off that trust helps pay for liquid nitrogen replenishment, to pay for new equipment, things like that. And that money can't even be attached for organizational expenditures or projects or salaries or anything like that. It's completely separate. So for the individual family, there's no further cost. For the organization, there's a mechanism to provide a revenue stream to cover any long-term storage costs. So I would say zero, essentially. And thank you for joining us online.
Yes. William has a question.
So with how medical protocols change and the science advances, I was just wondering if cryonic protocols change, and if they do, are there any retroactive changes to like historical freezings?
If anyone's ever had an accounting class, kind of odd way to answer the question, right? There's the LIFO method and the FIFO method of accounting. Last in, first out. You're right. We have improved greatly on a lot of things we do. The standby team, the procedures they do are much quicker, much more efficient, much more effective. We even do an ECMO in China. We can really prevent that damage. We've improved that. On the other side of the cryopreservation fluids, they've improved that. Those fluids that we use, that medical grade antifreeze, we've made that better and better over time. A lot of things will continue to improve. We may look back on this and say, wow, they didn't do a very good job. You know, they look at what we can do today. I imagine it will continue to evolve. So I don't think we can go back and improve or upgrade the processes we did for the early people. They just may have to wait longer until science and technology gets even more advanced. I think the last person to be cryopreserved, maybe before they've finally cured death, the death of death, I think they'll probably have such a good cryopreservation that their storage will be very short, and they'll be the first one out. And then as they go back and back and back and back, the people who maybe didn't have a very good cryopreservation, or maybe the people who had to have a straight freeze because they were found 3 days later, or maybe for the individual in Iowa that had been buried in the ground for 1.5 years because his family was not cooperative, and he had to go to court, and Alcor battled for that individual, and finally was able to pull that individual out of the ground and have them cryopreserved. I mean, a terrible, terrible outcome. That person probably has the most amount of damage, but yet we still fought for that person legally, ensured that their rights were honored. He may be the last one to be because there was no damage. That probably matches what George was talking about. He basically was just frozen, so nothing was done for him. So yeah, things have improved a lot, and I think people who are cryopreserved most recently will have the first opportunity to come out.
Question back here for you, Aaron, from Melissa.
Hi, I don't know if you just answered my question, but I was wondering how long before somebody leaves their body do they need to get in contact with you guys for starting the process or whatever?
You say when they've left their body?
When their consciousness.
Well, I hope they've contacted us before that happens. The families can sometimes reach out to the organizations, and under the right circumstances, and they're pretty stringent about this, they can sometimes sign up someone post-mortem, but it may be very limited as to what can be done to protect that body. And it is by an organization by organization basis and on an individual basis on the circumstances. Did that individual ever say they want to be cryopreserved? Or is this just, a son grasping at straws, can't say goodbye to his mother? And I get that. I truly do. But cryonics might not be the best solution under that. So there are a lot of variables that go into that decision-making process. Sometimes it can happen. Hopefully you pre-plan this. There's a term that's been coined out there called cryocrastination. It's like procrastination, okay? I got a whole list of stuff that I need to do when I get back to Arizona, and I've been procrastinating on. I better get that done before the end of the new year, right? People do that all the time with cryonics. They're young. They're healthy. I'm not going to die tomorrow. Yeah, I like this idea, but I don't need to sign up today. I can save a couple of bucks by not joining today and saving that membership money. Don't be one of those cryocrastinators. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've taken where a person wanted to do this, had the paperwork, and never did it, and they died, and there was nothing we could do.
I also wanted to ask about the operation, what's involved with that? And my last question is also if, do you think that they want to come back, bring that whole body back, or is it going to be like a cloning situation?
Well, that will depend upon future technology. I even alluded that into the video. I mean, will we clone a body and just take the brain and transplant the brain into the new, younger version of you? Will we bioprint? Boy, 3D printers amazing what 3D printers can do these days, bioprinters. Maybe we'll print you a whole brand new body. Maybe we'll build one through stem cell seeding and let it grow naturally that way. Maybe you'll be like an avatar where you'll have an interface with, we'll download all your memories, the whole connectome theory that they discussed here before, where your brain, the brain structure, the ultrastructure of the brain is what determines your memories. If we can scan that at a three-dimensional, high-definition level and print it at that, we can basically recreate their memories in that brain. Is it you? Will that brain have self-identity? I don't know, but it would have your memories. Are you you? Have you lost all your cells from when you were 14 years old? Is there any part of that 14-year-old that's still you? Are you that person? Tough way to answer, tough question to answer, let's put it that way. But I think there's a lot of mechanisms that might make this work, and some we've probably never even thought of yet.
I just wanted to mention that I checked out Cryonics Institute in Detroit, which is the oldest one. I think Mr. Bedford is in there. It's only $29,000, and the annual membership is $75. It's very, very cheap. To bury somebody now, today in Florida, in the ground with a mortuary and preserve their bodies, $25,000. So it's getting to the point where it's cheaper to cryopreserve than to do a normal burial. And even cremation is a couple $1,000s now.
That's right.
Death isn't free,
No, death is not free. If you ever had to go through probate, you'd find that one out. So you're absolutely right. There's quite a range. Even in China, they charge about $375,000 for this. Well, that's a lot of money, isn't it? Well, guess what? In China, if you want to be buried, it's $100,000 per year. Guess what? You don't own the land there. The government owns the land. 1% of the people are buried because most people can't afford it. So to have your body buried is about $100,000 equivalent every year. Family has to keep paying, keep paying, keep paying. If they stop paying or run out of money or lose interest or all your relatives die off, pull the body and have you cremated. And cremation really is a violation of your beliefs if you're Buddhist, Taoist, Confucianist. It's not really a religion, it's more of a philosophical basis. They don't like that. In this instance, cryonics is cheaper than burial.
One other question I have is, what about the religious, spiritual aspect of this? Okay, if you are frozen, and where does your spirit go, let's say, and if, let's say it goes to heaven if you're religious, what if you don't want to come back from heaven? Why would you want to come back here if you're in heaven?
You know, there's a lot of, if you go to the Alcor website, there's a whole section on cryonics and religion. In fact, you can even just Google that. There's a lot of very articulate scholars who have had this discussion and theory on it, that they could talk about this in a much greater length than I certainly could. I will say this, I've heard the story, though, that the Pope was asked a very similar question. What happens to the soul, if I can characterize it, of what you said, what happens to the soul when the embryo is frozen? And then the embryo is eventually implanted and is birthed and it becomes a human. And the Pope's response was that the soul is still captured in that embryo in the frozen state. And as it's finally warmed up and implanted, it becomes a human and it's always there. Would that be a good analogy to understand what may or may not happen with the body who's frozen? I don't know if the soul leaves and then comes back, or maybe it's just with the body the whole time. It's a great discussion, debate to have with a religious scholar on that. I've always wanted to do the same myself.
Aaron, I have a question from online, and they're asking if cryonics services are available in Europe.
So I believe they are available in Europe. So there's Tomorrow Biostasis, working in conjunction with the Euro Biostation Foundation. What's the EDF? European Biostasis Foundation is working with Tomorrow Biostasis, providing a comprehensive program that includes SST teams, Standby Stabilization Transport. That's these teams here. They do that, and they also provide the storage. And I believe to date they have done, what, up to 3 patients? Now it's relatively new, don't get me wrong. There's a great doctor who's running the program. They've been working on this for many, many years. Many of us have flown over there and spoken at conferences. And they put together a great, great program. And you know, they're branching out all the time. So yeah, Europe does have services. There's even Cryonics UK, which is an SS team over there. So there are other services over there.
Okay, Aaron Drake, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, thank you.
Very good. All right. So our next speaker is the founder of this church and a worldwide leader in age reversal and very knowledgeable about cryonics. Let's welcome Bill Faloon.
Thank you very much, Bill. We're going to talk about some of the scientific advances that have occurred over the last year and a half. But what I want to first dispel are any misconceptions that once something is dead and frozen, that it can never come back to life. Well, that was dispelled in a major way just about 6 months ago. They found a worm in the Siberian permafrost frozen, and they were able to bring it back to life after 46,000 years. Now, they've been doing that with other organisms where they're dead for a couple decades, and they bring them back to life. This is something that validates what we're talking about as it relates to humans who are medically cryopreserved with a lot of protection built in. But in nature, this is happening right now. So please, if there's any misconceptions remaining in your brain that once you're dead, you stay dead, and once you're frozen and dead, you're really going to stay dead, no, not at all. That's not the way it always works. And that was validated in a really kind of a study that really was an accident. It was just serendipitous that they were able to find this worm and bring it back to life. Well, the fantastic news is June 30th this year, the cover of the most prestigious scientific journal in the world, the cover talked about putting life on hold. It talked about the improved cryopreservation methods of tissues, organs, and organisms, whole bodies being cryopreserved and potentially being resuscitatable. When you get into a journal like Science, the rest of the media pays attention. And that includes Forbes. They did an expanded article on all of the different advances that are occurring around the United States and the world as it relates to improved cryopreservation methods of cells, tissues, organs, and even organisms. Forbes magazine article talked about researchers at Johns Hopkins doing research on limbs. And you think, well, how important osteosarcoma, and think about accidents, and you lose an arm, you lose a leg. Wouldn't it be incredible if there was an organ bank set up so that you could have that limb put back into your body? You'd have a hand again as opposed to not having it. Kidney transplants. University of Minnesota did research and we were able to extend the amount of time they froze a rat kidney, and put it back into the animal. This is record-breaking data, and it's been talked about, but not nearly as much. So what we're seeing right now is a revolution in the sciences as it relates to cryopreserved tissues, cells, organs, and organisms. But the idea of setting up a cryo-biobank of transplantable organs, because for those who don't know, there's lots of organ donors out there, and yet very few of their organs make it into an eligible recipient. The point of death has to occur at a time when that recipient is available, medical teams are available. Most organs that are donatable don't make it into a recipient. It's a huge number of unnecessary deaths. The research that I am supporting and many others at prestigious universities aims to set up organ banks. So we have plenty of hearts, lungs, kidneys, all kinds of tissues available to tissue type match them to the appropriate donor and have them available for every recipient that needs them. Everyone with failing kidneys, a failing heart, they'll have a cryopreserved organ in that bank for them. Harvard doing work on liver transplants and using cryopreserved livers. We lost a member of our church about a year ago to chronic liver failure, unfortunately, and he died because there was no available liver to transport into his body. Well, in a couple of years, that may no longer be a problem because people will be able to donate their livers, and those livers, if there's no recipient, cryopreserve those livers and make them available to a person in need. These are major advances that are going to result in people living a lot longer than what they used to. The United States government putting big money into cryopreservation research. They see the same type of advances that we do once we have organ banks set up with lots and lots of different kidneys, hearts, livers, lungs, bone marrow, tissues. We're going to be able to treat people medically in a completely different way. And right now we're hampered. Not enough donor organs, but not really a shortage of people willing to donate, a shortage of all the infrastructure being in place to do it efficiently. And we talk a lot about stem cells as a way of regenerating our aged bodies. Well, one of the more efficient ways of using stem cells is to take our own cells, use Yamanaka factors to move those back in time to a younger period, and then put them back into an older person. But it would also be good if we could cryopreserve our young bone marrow for future use. Lots of advances being made on providing the ability to take bone marrow, cryopreserve it, put it back into people who need it in a couple years or a couple decades or a couple centuries. These kind of advances are going to change the way medicine is practiced. National Geographic talking about the fact that scientists are trying to do the impossible. Take dead organs and resurrect them. All kinds of methodologies being experimented right now to figure out how to bring frozen dead organs back to life. We're already doing it, we being the scientific community, but we're not doing it exactly the way we want to see it happen. We want to see every viable organ cryopreserved, have that viable organ available for people in need. And of course, in the meantime, we're learning how to cryopreserve people better and how to potentially bring them back to life when the science emerges. Now, what's happening right now at major universities around the country and at laboratories that I personally support is we're looking at taking organs out of an animal and keeping it alive. And you wonder, why are we doing that? Well, we're going to learn how to maintain organ viability much longer than what we're able to right now. So let's say there is a transplantable heart available in Seattle, Washington, and there's someone in Washington, D.C. that needs that transplantable heart. Well, by keeping that alive outside the body for potentially days, if not longer, we can get that patient matched up with that donor and save that human being's life. We multiply that by organ banks all around the country, and we're able to save virtually everyone with heart failure, kidney failure, cirrhosis of the liver, all these diseases that involve organ failure. We'll have spare organs. We got more than enough donors, as I said. It's a matter of not having an efficient system to enable those donor organs to make it into people with organ failure. And I love the headlines that the media is talking about nowadays. They're talking about, is death real? Meaning, do you stay dead when you die? Well, we already know that that's not the case. I'm going to show you a video in just a minute to demonstrate that so you understand that there is no permanent death if you get to a person in time or if a certain set of circumstances occurs. But what they're doing is they're circulating blood through organs outside the body, keeping them going. They're learning how to keep these organs healthier so that they can apply that technology to making lots and lots of donor organs available. And the great news is the technology, the equipment, the expertise, it's already there. It's just a matter now of enhancing it. And again, major universities doing this research and groups, charitable groups that I support, also doing this research. We kind of root each other on. We want someone to perfect the cryopreservation of a kidney, of a liver, of a heart, because once that occurs, lots and lots of lives will be saved. And I just want to use this slide as an example of why we have this church, why we get together once a month to interact with each other. Many of you may know I sponsor once a year, I've been doing this since 2009, a Young Immortalist Conference. Once a year where I bring young people under the age of 32 who are signed up to be cryopreserved. They want to live forever. I like to get them all together for 2.5 days and we talk about how can we make this better, what technologies might emerge to enable cryopreserved people to be reanimated in a better way, how to protect against inappropriate legal attacks by the government. We've had attacks by the government. We prevailed in virtually every single one of them, but nonetheless, those are issues we have to face. But anyway, Sebastian Giwi, he's a PhD from Harvard. He graduated with a bunch of Harvard PhDs, and they had an idea about organ banking, and they set up the Organ Preservation Alliance. It's a 501c3 charity, and they aimed to bring the science of cryopreservation into the mainstream. Now, I and several very prominent people funded that organization pretty much on speculation. We didn't know if these Harvard PhDs would really accomplish what they said they were going to do. They said, we're going to put cryonics on the cover of prestigious journals. This is going to become an accepted science. So we put some money on Inspect. And then Dr. Giwi, he came to one of our immortality conferences, and he met another scientist, and they started working together, and they formed an organization in 2015 called ASIAM. They are looking to establish a global bank of bone marrow transplants so that everyone who needs a bone marrow transplant, and those are typically leukemia patients, anyone with a hematological malignancy, typically chemo eradicates the bone marrow, and then they need new bone marrow from somebody else, and they need a good match. But what happened in 2023, this is 10 years after this individual approached me at a Young Immortalist meeting, was the cover of Science magazine. That group of Harvard PhDs made that happen. They put cryonics on the map in a scientific way that's garnered tremendous amounts of publicity. So that's an example of bringing people together, interacting with different ideas, and enabling people to understand there's certain ways to efficiently move technology forward. This was the inside story of the journal Science, Frozen in Time. They were talking about the many different organs that are being cryopreserved now and successfully resuscitated to a limited degree. We haven't perfected it yet, but it's being worked on day and night. And eventually, the right formula will be developed, and we will have those organ banks. MIT giving us coverage, talking about this idea of cryopreservation and reanimation. Everyone thought this was going to be a fad back in the 1960s that was going to die out and people would just forget about it. Well, that didn't happen. In the 1960s, there was some initial enthusiasm, a little bit of a depression in the 1970s because we just didn't know what we were doing. We didn't realize we needed to put trust funds aside to maintain these patients. And I wasn't involved in back then, or I would have put a stop to it, but they were actually having patients, families, pay monthly dues to keep their parents frozen, and that just didn't work out. But the idea is cryonics has advanced to the point where each organization, Alcor and CI, they have about 1,500 signed-up members. They've got over 400 patients, perhaps between the two of them, well over 400. And then there's organizations like European Biostasis that's growing exponentially. They've got a group of medical doctors in Europe that are promoting this, and they're making it happen. So as it relates to the idea that something is dead and frozen, dead meaning there's no EKG, no EEG, no brain activity, no heart activity, no circulation, you've got something that's dead. Well, a lot of times this happens in winter with certain species. Entire organisms are frozen and they come back to life. And one of the reasons they're able to do that is they naturally secrete glycerol, that's a biological antifreeze. And by secreting that in their body, they don't sustain the freezing damage. But I'm going to play a video for you right now. It's very short, but it'll show you something that I think may open your eyes. You may never forget what you're about to see. We're talking about bringing something dead back to life. It's no longer science fiction.
These are the wood frogs that were caught last night. They've spent the whole winter on the forest floor, and most of that time they were frozen solid.
The freezer is set at 8 degrees below freezing, roughly the temperature of the ground in winter. In a matter of hours, they'll be hard as rocks.
We have fully frozen Rana sylvatica wood frogs. They're probably 50–60% ice now, and their hearts are stopped, their brains are flatlined, their limbs can't be moved, they would be broken up. Yet they're still alive.
But the most amazing thing is the fact that the wood frog comes back to life. Over a couple of hours, it makes a miraculous and complete recovery. Immortality might be ours if we could manage to do the same.
If anyone wants to watch that, just type onto Google frozen frog comes back to life, and you can see a much longer version, that which is a very short excerpt. But does anyone in this room still believe that dead frozen organisms cannot come back to life? If you did before, well, that kind of demonstrates. And it's not just those wood frogs. There's a number of animals out there that freeze to death in the winter. They freeze to death, and they come back to life. Now, of course, that's not the same process that we have to deal with human beings. We're more complex. But the fact is, at least it proves the concept that death and freezing doesn't mean the end. It means there's an opportunity to come back. And just a couple weeks ago, major announcement about arthrobots, they're calling them, ways in which they can produce internally robots that repair brain tissue. Now, we could give a long presentation on all of this, but this is the advances. These are advances that were predicted decades ago by people in the cryonics community, wondering how we're going to repair the damage that occurs during freezing and potentially ischemia. It's going to be these little robots running around, repairing cells, and this is a visual of what they do. These are self-constructed within the body, and they go in and they repair damaged cells in the brain. So people who suffer from stroke or dementia damage for all kinds of reasons, there may be a method to do this that's out of the Fantastic Voyage movie. It's out of science fiction, but the fact is, it's happening for real today, and this was published just 2 weeks ago in a major way. So that's my scientific update. I'm just going to go through my annual holiday presentation. I've been doing this now for 10 consecutive years, and it's not really updated, but I'll update it when I need to. And people tend to romanticize the past as if there was something better in the past than there is today, and how incorrect they are. And I can give you just one example. If you have a chronic health ailment, let's say esophageal reflux, well, back then you just suffered. There was no proton pump inhibitor to suppress that acid formation. You shouldn't be on those drugs for a long time, but if you have an acute attack, get on them for a week or two. Just the dental issues. These people lived in chronic agony. They almost never had a comfortable environment. They were either too hot or too cold. It almost never got good. And what you didn't have is a lot of light. They show these bright pictures, but in reality, unless you were very wealthy, all you could do is dine by candlelight. And candlelight, I hate to tell you, doesn't throw out much illumination. So these pictures of how things were in the past, in reality, they were much darker if you were very wealthy. You had to be extremely wealthy to have the ability to afford whale oil or candles or any kind. So for the average person out there, sun went down, and well, for most people on Christmas Eve, this is what happened. Sun went down, everything is dark, you go to bed, and when the sun comes up, you wake up. I mean, that's a heck of a way to have to live your life by virtue of when the sun rises, when it sets, but that was the typical person. So for thousands of years in recorded history, this world was just a very dark place. And the idea that you could use power, electrical power, to light up, well, that took people innovating, took daring innovators. And when buying the fuel to keep yourself warm or to keep yourself illuminated, it cost an absolute fortune. So someone thought, why don't we try to drill and pull oil out of the ground to provide us with energy? And the problem is that was considered an impossibility. And there's a lot of technical reasons I can give for that. It's not like drilling a water well. It was very complicated. Everyone thought it was impossible, except one individual, Edwin Drake. He thought he could find a way to drill a hole in the ground and extract oil. And bear in mind, oil back then was worth a lot of money. There was very little way to get access to it. And he worked around the clock to make that happen. He was ridiculed. He was able to raise some money. And he almost failed. And the investors got so frustrated, they sent him a letter saying, stop what you're doing. We're not funding you anymore. That letter got delayed in the mail. And that's the only reason why he kept his research going, and he developed that first oil well. So 1859, he strikes oil. That fueled the Industrial Revolution that put us where we are today. One person, it's an underappreciated achievement, but he did make that happen. And you look at the chronology, and this is going to be relevant to cryonics, to our ability to reverse aging, that once we figure out that way to reverse aging, well, then the science is going to go very fast. But you look at this, 1860, the first load of petroleum is sent by ship, the first time. In 1861, the oil well produces 300 barrels a day, but just the same year, the next well yields 4,000 barrels a day. And then again, that same year, the first shipload sent from the United States to London of oil. He only discovered this in 1859. This is what can happen in over a 2 to 3 year period, and we're going to see this happen with aging research. They're going to make some advances, and we're going to see people, well, doing the impossible. These big ships transporting oil around the world. And what did that do for civilization? Well, remember, oil used to be expensive before Edwin Drake discovered it. So it went from $10 a barrel, and back in those days, $10 was a lot of money, down to 10 cents. And that's what the future is going to be like as it relates to our healthcare. Right now, healthcare is inefficient. It's kind of primitive, so it's expensive and cumbersome. It doesn't work that well. In the future, this is going to be something where people will be able to take their good health for granted. Technology will be in their body to keep them healthy no matter what they do. So the idea of drilling oil under the sea, also ridiculed until people decided, well, let's just go and do it. And that's what I'd like to think members of this church are doing. We are actively intervening into our aging process. We're slowing it down wherever we can. We're taking advantage of medical discoveries. Well, 1970s, most of us were around then. The oil embargo, gasoline prices went up. But what every expert said, and these were people with knowledge, people who were petroleum engineers, these were the people who knew what they're talking about. They said, if you look at the world's proven and probable oil reserves, we're going to run out by year 2000. We're going to have to figure out new ways to create energy, to create light. The world may go dark again. Your cars won't work. This was a universal prediction. Well, 2000 came around. We still had oil, but they were still predicting, well, another 5 or 10 years, we really will be out. But this guy didn't believe that. He said, you know what, there's different ways of drilling that may yield lots and lots of oil. George Mitchell, he pioneered the hydraulic fracking and horizontal drilling, and he wound up, well, becoming quite wealthy. Unfortunately, he's no longer alive, and I regret that. But this one individual just did what everyone said you can't do, and he made it happen. And the United States is still the world's leading oil producer. We produce more now than anyone in the world. We were supposed to be completely out of it like over a decade or more ago, but we did it. We made it happen. And this is just an example of the impossible happening in our lifetime, where every expert says, this can't happen. And all of a sudden, someone just says, well, maybe if we do it differently, it can. And, well, he did it. He did it. Mr. Mitchell did that. So Wall Street Journal talking about the impossible happening in our lifetime. We're going to see aging go in reverse, which is considered impossible by most people. And we're going to see improvements in cryopreservation that may enable people to come back to life. And this was a slide from a couple years ago where we produced 12 million barrels, 2019. Most recent number of barrels produced this year, well over 13 million. So there's no shortage of oil right now. I know that's an environmental concern for some people, but the idea is the impossible is actually occurring every single day in a scientific setting. And as that technology emerges, we're going to start bringing people back to life. Again, 2021, United States producing more oil per day than anyone else. You think Russia and Saudi Arabia are producing more? They're exporting more, but we're producing more, and that number has gone from 11 million there in 2021 to 13 million in 2023. It's just absolutely amazing. And it's fulfilling the Creator's plan for mankind, us, people in this room, people around this world. It's our mission to discover ways to slow aging, to cure disease, to provide immortality to those who choose it. That's our obligation, to facilitate the transformation of life into an era of abundant duration. Because just like with that oil, which was in such great shortage in the 1850s, 1860s, one discovery, and the world's loaded with oil, loaded. Price goes from $10 a barrel down to 10 cents. It becomes affordable. So those who think only wealthy people can afford cryonics, only wealthy people can live forever, the technology will be available just like cell phones are. Everyone has one. It gets very inexpensive when everyone wants it. So what we're going to do is go from a situation where we have cryonics members cryopreserved, and we do have the team here. I don't know if the people want to introduce themselves, but we do have, by the way, a member of this church who is in an ICU, and because of that, we have an entire team here ready just in case he doesn't make it. And Aaron, would you like to introduce the group so that people know who our staff is?
We have Sayer here he flew in from California just today. Stand up, Sayer.
Yes, chef, sir.
Let me take a look at you. There you go. Good looking guy. Sayer Johansson, he is from California, and he runs the suspended animation office out there. He is the COO of the organization, is that correct? And he, that's great. And he's very familiar with the facility that's here in Boynton Beach. And he's here not only to give the tours to everyone here, but also to help oversee this case that we have going on with this individual. We've got a new person joining us. Vincent, how do you pronounce your last name?
Berberon.
There you go. I've mispronounced it many times. Vincent is a very skilled critical care paramedic. He trained at the University of Florida and is a critical care paramedic out of their program. And he's a great addition to our team, and he'll be able to do leading a lot of new paramedics and nurses that we train. Give it up for Vincent. Christine. Oh, wonderful nurse. I've known Christine for a long, long time. She's worked with me on many cases, all the way back to Alcor, and she is an RN from Canada. Yeah, and she does a lot of technical writing for us, and she's very knowledgeable in the medical environment, and we really appreciate her being on our team. And, I can't forget the CEO of Resurgence Biomedical Sciences, Houston Westfall. He's also the CEO of Suspended Animation. So he's got a dual role, and he's really in charge of putting this entire program together. And I appreciate Houston making me a part of his team. So thanks for being here, and we're glad you got to stay. Bill, thank you.
That individual, by the way, learned about cryonics by attending this church a number of years ago, and he decided to sign up, and we flew extra people in just in case something happens. We do what we can. Cryonics members literally become part of our family in many respects. We hear about their illnesses. We learn about serious illnesses. We make preparations to do a cryopreservation. And in some cases, and this is rare nowadays, but in some cases, we find out that they're not really dying. The most extreme situation occurred way back in the 80s. We were called in by the hospital saying he's probably not going to survive the night. So we got the staff together, got everyone together, and back in those days, they had the charts just hanging off the bed, at the end of the beds. And our staff just sitting there bored, they started reading the chart, and they realized he wasn't really dying. The doctors had just overlooked something. We contacted the doctors, they said, oh, you're right. They put that back in, and the patient lived another 11 years. Yeah, it was amazing. Just amazing. And then I look at Saul Kent, who deanimated. He's a co-founder of this church, by the way, and he was pronounced terminally ill with cancer in year 2000. He had a poorly differentiated squamous cell carcinoma of his sinus. Picture a tennis ball shoved up your sinus into your brain and orbital cavity. And every doctor said, look, this is inoperable. You know, there's nothing we can do about this. Just check into a hospice. Well, we had different plans. We put our team of researchers together, and we did intra-arterial chemo directly into the tumor, which shrunk it. And then we followed up with proton beam accelerated radiation, which was only available at Loma Limited back then. That's a very precise way of cutting out what was residual of that tumor mass. And we were able to eradicate the cancer. And we used about 15 unapproved drugs, by the way, brought in from all kinds of other countries. But the major factors in curing that cancer was the intra-arterial chemo that was going through the femoral arteries all the way up to the external carotid and putting cisplatin directly into the tumor, followed up by that radiation and lots of other therapies and lots of other immune therapies that are not commonly prescribed. We kept Saul alive 23 years longer than what he was supposed to be kept alive because of, yeah, it was an amazing situation. And I just will always speak truthfully. Some of us here, like me, I try to do everything. I try that's healthy. Saul made some attempt, but he was nowhere near as committed as he should have been. I'm going to say that in a diplomatic way. The fact is he really just didn't bother taking care of himself. He was so committed to achieving immortality for everybody, he so often ignored his own health, and that was regrettable. But anyway, Saul was cryopreserved, and he's joining, frankly, a number of my friends who are now getting older. And the purpose of this church is we don't want people to die. We want to keep you alive forever if we can. That's pretty much the end of my presentation. Yep.
So a question from online, and that is, what would you say is the most advanced breakthrough in cryonics recently, if you could speak to that?
The single most advanced was cryopreserving a medical doctor, MD, PhD, who didn't have any money. So we decided, well, these are situations where our charitable purposes come into effect, but we told him, we're going to try something on you that's never been done before. That's kind of your price for getting a free cryopreservation. And what we did was very intensively, of course, put in the vitrification solution, but we didn't freeze him as cold as we normally do. And then we did some follow-up scans on his brain, and it turns out this individual has the most perfectly preserved brain of anyone we know of who's ever been cryopreserved. We were able to do some experimental work that we don't normally do on patients, and he got lucky enough to benefit from the experiment. So he may be the most likely person to be reanimated, and it cost him nothing. We did it at no charge, and he had contributed so much during his life to the science. He was part of the Supercentenarian project that we helped to fund, where we flew around the world, took the blood and health history of every supercentenarian to figure out why were they living to be over 100 in such good shape. We also did genetic sequencing and donated that to Harvard. Harvard's trying to figure out a way now to make everyone a supercentenarian. So that individual was involved in anti-aging research. He was very much devoted to cryonics, but he never had the money to sign up. A lot of MDs and PhDs don't always make the money you think they do. Anyway, that's the most successful person out there who's been cryopreserved.
Thank you, Bill. Here's a question from Pat.
Oh, I just had a comment. As a critical care nurse for over 50 years, I can attest that everything does not stop at death. Anybody who's been around bodies who've deceased, their beard continues to grow, their nails continue to grow. I've had instances that on the monitor, it looked, and they were pronounced dead. 45 minutes later, they sat up. The wife fainted, but, you know, and then I've had instances that people have been dead, stopped breathing for almost an hour, but their EKG continues to beat. You still see it. So there's a lot to be learned there. Now, the other thing is, we all heard the expression, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I look at the pound with cryonics. It's going to take more money to bring them back. And what I like about coming to these meetings, you spend as much, if not more, emphasis on how to stay well so it won't cost so much more when that development of longevity comes on the scene. Thank you.
Excellent points being raised. Yes, our cells die at different rates. They think brain cells die after 5 minutes. In reality, in the pig model, they were able to show after 4 hours, they can resuscitate dead pig brains, and that window keeps expanding. But yes, a person who's declared clinically dead or legally dead, biologically, most of them are still alive. It takes 12 hours for muscle cells to die. So it's interesting what little people understand about death, and you know a lot because you were there on the front lines as an RN.
Question over here from Jerry.
Bill, I'm one of those people that kind of educates myself on different things using YouTube. And there's a guy out there by the name of Joe Dispenza who is doing all kinds of work with people who are very sick, who have stage 4 cancers and MS and all different kinds of things. And he's out there, and with his program, he's reversing these things. Are you familiar at all with Joe Dispenza?
I've heard his name, and I don't know anything more about him than that. But there's no question that if you have a serious illness, there's a lot more that you can do beyond conventional medicine. But don't ignore the conventional medicine. We've lost people with aortic stenosis, where the aortic valve is just narrowing to the point the heart's unable to push blood through anymore. And I've begged certain people, I said, I know surgery is horrific. Back in those days, there was only open chest surgery. Now they can put a catheter through the femoral artery and do transcatheter valve replacement. But nonetheless, I'm giving that as an example that if you have aortic stenosis, you can't just rely on natural ways to make the heart pump better because that gap is narrowing. So I appreciate people who are doing cutting-edge work in saving lives. We've been doing that for a long time, as have others. Very good.
Thank you. Here's a question back here.
Hi, my name is Diane. If you die in an accident, how do you get the cryonics team out to you? Is that still an option?
Accidents are bad news. We have to then convince the medical examiner to get that patient, we call them patients by the way, out of the morgue fast. Do not do a full autopsy. And we're preparing some litigation ahead of time, so if we run into those cases, we will have the appropriate documents to help get us out of that situation. But the accidental deaths are not good. You want a prolonged death, so everyone can be totally prepared to cryopreserve you. It doesn't necessarily have to be that prolonged. You can have a major heart attack, and they can keep you alive in a hospital for a couple hours. We can get our team together. But accidents, just finding people after they've been dead for 3 days, that happens, and those are the challenges. We're working right now on a little ring you wear that when your heartbeat drops below a certain number, it alerts people to go out and get you. So we're working on that project, but it's a good question, and we don't have a good solution to those accidents. That's bad news.
Okay, last call for questions. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Faloon. Okay. We do have another event this evening, and that's the Remembrance of the Resurrectables, where we will show the slides and the bios and some photographs of some people who are in suspension. There are a lot of people in suspension, but not everyone was public about it, but we do have a number of them that we're going to be going through here in just a moment. And I hope that you'll be able to share this recording with all those people that you love so they can learn what you learned here tonight. And remember tonight, after the Remembrance of the Resurrectables, there will be tours of the ambulance. And of course, we'll have a holiday feast afterwards as well. So let's go ahead and run that. And we have some music with Elaine Silver to accompany the Remembrance of the Resurrectables. And we want to also never forget these people who are in suspension. It's now our job to bring them out of this cold sleep that they're in. So let's keep them in our minds and remember them until we can bring them out of the stasis that they're in.
Let's build a better world for every boy and girl, every woman and man, take them by the hand, and let's build a better world. We are one big family, and we are the human race, on a big and beautiful planet, spinning through outer space. Let's build a better world for every boy and girl, every woman and man, take them by the hand, and let's build a better world. Everyone has value, and we all need love and respect. This helps to build a better world as we reach out to connect. Let's build a better world for every boy and girl, every woman and man, take them by the hand. Let's build a better world. Do unto each other is the wise and golden rule. You're my sister, you're my brother, and life is one big school.